Okay, this is going to be a very interactive session. There's not many slides, but there will be many questions to you, so prepare. The extension mechanism were already presented this morning by Christophe and Roland, and we have been working on this now for 2 years and really using the trust framework in its basic components as a technical compatibility framework to enable trust for a certain purpose. And originally, the compliance document was established to create transparency on cloud services and all of their aspects, the relevant criteria to describe attributes of that cloud service. That's very good, that's very important. Today we also saw that there are some level 3 services available now. So yes, that is on a good track. And of course we need to see more market adoption, but that's a good thing. 2 years ago we said, okay, but we can do more with this trust framework. And there are domain-specific opportunities and geography-specific opportunities. And that was already explained this morning. So for the domains, there's this idea about bring your own rules. Domains may have their own certifications, their own legislation, contractual clauses that they would like to translate in an electronic means to verify them. Okay, that sounds like a trust framework applied to the specific rule set. And sorry. This slide was already presented this morning, including all of the benefits that this had, and that's actually what we're after. And if you click to the next slide, then also for the geographies, very similar setup. Also a region may have their specific regulations and a specific identification of natural persons, of organizations, with trust authorities that define that, yes, this is a recognized organizational ID, but also it could be other rules that apply in a certain country. They can also be formulated and transformed into something that we can verify electronically. So those are the two domain extensions, and by talking to many stakeholders, we've already seen that often they also go together. In Europe, aviation industry has certain European aviation industry regulations that apply. Okay, we may want to verify them. Some of the regulations might also be global for a domain, right? So you will see a mix and a combination of domain-specific regulations and geography-specific regulation. That's the reality of global economy, right? That's where we live in. But in each of these areas, in these pockets of that matrix geography domains, there's an opportunity to define these criteria and to translate them into a technical implementation. And that is what we are after. Now, there are different ways in which we can orchestrate that, and that's what we want to discuss with you. Next slide. Yes. So the first question is there interest in this room for these extensions? If not, leave the room. Okay, every one of you, because that's why you came. Good.
So I take the other one. Sorry for my voice. So we work and we describe 4 scenarios that we are going to present to you now. So it's really open for each scenario to have your feedback. First scenario, okay, I do it. We didn't have time to organize ourselves. So first scenario is to fully open. You have no rules. You reuse the code because it's open source code. You can do whatever you want without any feedback or agreement from Gaia-X. You are totally free to reuse the compliance engine that is used as a clearinghouse to do something else, to implement your own rules. You have no check from Gaia-X, no compatibility. You can use it if you can, but it's up to you. So totally free, up to you.
Right, and this scenario is not new. Since Gaia-X has started, the whole design, the architecture has been in the public domain. The code is open source with an open source license. So anyone in the world could take it, fork it, and build their own trust framework. This is scenario 1, total freedom.
Do you have any interest or do you see any blocking point on that scenario? I keep mine.
Sukumar from the European Health Data Association. It's obvious that, well, if you have a standard and then it's used that way, how is the feedback loop for the technical standards behind if the technology or technical compatibility is not guaranteed? I've seen that with many standards being in use, and that's not a good way forward. Yeah, it's a real blocking point.
Thank you. Any other feedback?
Hello, from Hospital Clinic de Barcelona. My impression is that the big usual suspects will absorb this code and be converted in a product managed by companies outside Europe, so not very appealing.
Yeah, that's true, it's possible.
So you don't seem to be too enthusiastic. But let me play devil's advocate. There are still on scenario one. Maybe in certain very specialist domain, there might still be a use case, right? If you have no interest to be interoperable with anyone else, you live on an island, I'm thinking maybe defense in some area or security services, you're in a very totally isolated space, maybe this could make sense, right? So for that specific group of participants, you may want to have, and then you have 100% control on what you do, but of course, no guarantee at all that you can ever be compatible or interoperable with other parties. So there might be an edge use case, which I could still imagine. Klaus?
Well, I have three a little bit counterpoints. I think the assumption that just because you're developing your own rules and operate them on your own software makes you not interoperable with others is based on the assumption that's perhaps inherited in your wording of an extension. But if you look at it like your personal wallet, you have a number of membership cards and they build one on top of the other. So just creating additional credentials doesn't make you interoperable with the rest of the world. So if you're not doing you were using the example of aerospace specific certifications, if you don't request it for your general communication, you're still interoperable. The second point, we are working, Christoph is working on a technical compatibility kit. So also the assumption that just because you give the freedom to create your own rules, to operate it on your own services, does not necessarily mean you're technical not interoperable if there's a technical compatibility kit that parties agree upon. And the third one is we do have a trust framework that will become rolled out through EC or EU regulation for identities, for organizational IDs and personal IDs, which is IDAS. And you could make a very, very similar argument that you were making in your points. How does it work if two companies have trust to each other when there's one trust framework for identities called IDAS and the other one is Gaia-X, which is in that sense creates an extension to another framework. So that was a very, very long story, and to make it short, I think there's a middle ground where you can still achieve interoperability for everything that is not different, but for at least interoperability for what's common, where you can achieve technical compatibility through technical compatibility kits, and that we have to just accept a world where there's going to be different frameworks specifically around identities that we need to integrate anyhow.
Yes, that's a more nuanced answer. That's also why we wrote the last bullet, like technical compatibility could still be possible, maybe for parts of your solution, but not for certain defense-specific extension or something where you separate. Also here, the clearinghouses might be created by this custodian, specific to this initiative and not compatible to clearing anything from anyone else, right? So that could be also dedicated here.
Thank you. That's a very important point. So my name is Phung Nguyen from Sintef, Norway. So what I find interesting in this model is that for the research environment, for the research purposes, we want to push to try to experiment, do more experiments, and of course, like in the panel discussion, we know we need to try in the season 2, right, with more automation, more security. We may want to see how dynamic or basically adaptive kind of data sharing that can be done on top of this. So open source is good for the research in a way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the panel this morning there was this discussion about quantum proof technologies and encryption. Yes, if anyone wants to experiment and add a quantum proof extension, be our guest, do it. One more?
Mark van Zander from Siant. This is really about the technical compatibility. It is not about the legal organization, because that is, if you want to use a resource or something else, you need to have trust or a trust framework on the technical, but also on the legal and organizational level. How is that enforced?
Well, in this case, in this scenario, it's fully up to the custodian to define any of the rules, also on the legal or the organizational governance side. Here, the custodian is the boss and agrees with the participants what they want to apply on all the interoperability layers, I would say. Yeah? But you will see later, in the other scenarios, there is also this legal freedom, but we get to that. Okay, scenario 2. Now we change to the other extreme of the scenarios. And this is actually what we do today, and since Gaia-X was created. In this scenario, the extension is fully managed by the Gaia-X ASBL association. The criteria are discussed in the Policy Rules Committee, the PRC, that is a member-driven group where we discuss about this, about the schema. And there is a final validation of whatever we produce here by the Gaia-X board and the board of directors. The clearinghouses are implemented by the Gaia-X tech team, and the extension can be provided by all the clearinghouse organizations, and by definition, and because we design it as such, technical compatibility is guaranteed. So this is the current model, fully Gaia-X ASBL controlled, membership controlled. So, what do you think?
I think that this model is good for ensuring the compatibility across the members, but I'm wondering whether it's preventing a bit the business, because I don't think if the idea could be that someone could make business out of the extension development, for example. So in that case, so good for compatibility, but prevent the possibility to make money out of the extension.
Yes, fully agree. Any other feedback?
Fully correct.
I think the blocking point could be is the speed. If you want to have changes, so you need to go through the whole process. So adapting is very challenging, I think.
No, the PRC has been blazingly fast in the past years, no?
I'm engaging from South Korea, Circular Solution. Personally, I like this solution rather than Cartesian, because this already defined a kind of a framework already used so far. But one thing that I noticed is I already got partner number ID from Gaia-X. Actually, the clearinghouse from Gaia-X, even though it's Gaia-X. But the point is, it took more than 7 days. So that is something we're struggling to understand why it takes a long time, because they said already 1 or 2 days, but in actual timing plan, it took 7 days. So as long as it resolves this kind of issue, that would be good. But on the other hand, I'm also interested in scenario 1 previously because geographically, I'm in South Korea. That's why different time zone and different kind of language and so on and so on. From that point of view, scenario 1 is very interesting, but anyhow, it's good to standardize standard of this control. It's good to with the Gaia-X standard, but still I think pros and cons from the different side of geographically, I think so. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, but hold your breath. We still have scenario 3 and 4, so there's maybe more options for you still coming. But you're right. I mean, there is, of course, a slowness in every governance organization, especially membership-driven. You need to talk about the points, you need to come to consensus, there's a voting procedure, there's a vetting, there's a validation, there's another board meeting to wait for. Yes, it will not be very fast. But that is always true in any association that needs to set a common agreement. You will always have an interaction. I think the main point here is that we are talking about European controlled association. So I don't think you want in Korea or Japan or Canada to be controlled by a European association for the framework you use, right? I mean, it's very valid in Europe, and in Europe we will make this work. But outside Europe, no.
Which Bert knows, of course. I'd love to increase the team to provide the corresponding code for any extension. I'm dreaming of having 100, 200 compliance code engineers. I can manage that. The key question is, can we finance that? So that's not, right now the organization cannot do that. We need kind of 1 million members for doing that. And is it sustainable? So that's, it's not me who is against that, but maybe business models.
But this CTO will find some AI, Gen AI tools to help him automate that, no? But stay away, Christophe, because scenario 3 and 4 also need your team. So we're still hanging on you.
No other feedback or questions? No. So scenario 3 is a more balanced one, my preferred one. In fact, inside the geographical or the domain extension, you create your own governance, agreed by your team. You do your own rules, and you check after the alignment with value. Gaia-X value are not being European first. It's transparency, it's sustainability. We have listed them, in fact, so you have many values. That sovereignty, for example, as autonomy can be extended without any issue to South Korea. It's not European sovereignty, it will be South Korean sovereignty. Then the clearinghouse code team will do the code. You will be able to have it, yes. Christophe is not smiling. So you have the code, and you are able to run it directly. And there is a technical compatibility, so guarantee, because you have the way to use this code. So it's really more a balance. You have your own criteria, you define your own criteria, and there's only a validation at the board of directors to check if they are aligned with the Gaia-X values, and that's all. So you have a certain control to check, it's not in opposition, but only at the end, so you have more speed, and also a minimum interoperability, a minimum compatibility with others, and the code of the clearinghouse.
A small nuance on this coding, by the way. So if the custodian is capable, of course they could code also themselves, and the central team only does a verification of the code, right? So it doesn't mean it all lands on the central team. There's nuances to
It's still open source. Open source, everybody is able to contribute. No, I will not give you mic.
No, actually, Delphine did that already. So you will show that. We did a small extension already for another geography, like a Japanese identity system. It's not part of the compliance. It's not part of an official extension because we don't have the legal, the validation of the PRC. But technically, we have already kind of an idea, a harness how to build it in order to make that scalable. But my remark applies if we have tons of extensions with a lot of new stuff for defense, for aerospace, then we hit the implementation kind of resource question. But for for starters, that could work, yeah.
But that's not the main point of debate for the scenarios. That's an implementation choice about who does it. The essential point is here that there is a verification of the code and there is a validation of the whole extension if it is close enough to Gaia-X values. So there's a bit of a middle ground of control in this scenario.
Any questions, feedback, interest on this?
Hi, I just wanted to point out that sometimes validation of code is as hard, if not harder, than actually developing it. So just...
But the Christoph team is perfect. They will understand everything.
They make a verification kit, AI powered. Other feedback on this one?
At the moment, I think it is still too much depending on the Gaia-X tech team, and that is challenging, even the same as the previous one, but not that much less, I think.
Probably fair. And on the board of directors, no? We're not always that fast either.
Next.
Now, I have a feedback actually. It was Catherine's preferred model, you said. My big concern with it is how do we do this alignment with Gaia-X values? That is not a black and white, right? That's an interpretation. And I struggle to see how we can ever be a fair judge about what is close enough to the values and what not. So for me personally, this is a non-working model. But we agree to disagree on this, which is fine in a democracy. And
that's why we finish with 4 scenarios, thinking that the business will choose. So we present the 4 in order you can pick and choose the one you prefer.
Yes, so the 4th scenario and the last one is almost the same, but in the second bullet you see the validation is gone by the Gaia-X organization. Also, the validation of the rules and the definitions are with the custodian. So this is close again to the first scenario, where we give a lot of responsibility to the custodian, but the implementation, the technical implementation, is again made or verified by the Gaia-X team, which ensures that there is technical compatibility in this scenario, right? In the first one, there was not this guarantee. In this scenario, there's a guarantee of technical compatibility, but total freedom on the criteria and the labels and whatever the custodian thinks they need to implement. Okay? So, again, the question. What do you see in this one?
I mean, in my opinion, I think this is not going to work because a Gaia-X tech team, I don't think is going to develop something that is not being first validated by the Gaia-X itself. Or at least it's a bit risky. And I don't think that they may have, let's say, resources for developing whatever is proposed by any custodian. Either it is validated or not validated by the board of directors, and in this case, even less. Yeah. So that's my humble opinion.
Sure, but let's leave in the middle that in this scenario, I may say that the custodian organization needs to develop the code. So I would not get stuck on who develops the code.
Unless you trust in the custodian.
You trust them, but you verify the code in the end. I mean, and the verification is a technical one, right? It is, does this code extend the ontology in the proper way, and does it enable the clearinghouse to verify, to validate a credential, right? According to the technical implementation layer. It's a technical code, right? It's not an interpretation or a validation of a rule.
I see a missing piece in this scenario. Basically, the extension proposed by the custodian could be classified and, let's say, used on their own environment, but not considered, let's say, trustworthy in other environment. So with this kind of categorization, you could find the spot to allow the custodian to run their own completely rules and extension in their own environment, but keep full compatibility with the other. Because we have to take into account that this kind of scenario should be implemented in multi ecosystems, multi-data space environment, and this missing piece would help to, let's say, create also the, let's say, initiative to then propose from the custodian extension to be approved technically and also, let's say, compliance in a compliance way. So this scenario would be, let's say, working better with this additional point, in my opinion.
Can you say one more? What is the additional point?
It's like making a category of extensions that are custodian driven. So this could be accepted by other environment, are valid in the custodian scope, but then can be, let's say, kept in a list, or let's say analyzed by the PRC, accepted, analyzed by the tech team that doesn't have care to develop, but can, let's say, validate. So it's create an environment for the custodian to run their own environment, being completely technical compatible, compliance compatible in a subset of their rules, but allow them to have freedom to realize, implement whatever they want.
That's absolutely the intent of this scenario, to create a possibility for a custodian to implement their own rules, still being technically compatible. Now then later, I can also see a life cycle where if this matures, you bring it to scenario 3 or eventually maybe even 2 if there is full endorsement, full agreement about the validity of this extension. Then you could transition from 4 to 3 to 2.
In fact, here it's just a sum up of the scenario, but there's a white paper with a full detail. So we are just trying to explain and have your feedback on the sum up. But if you read the detail, you will find more information and understand how to use it more. So, but I think it's very useful, the way you are rephrasing what you understood, helps everyone else also to understood, and us to get the feedback and improve.
At the moment they're saying that no checking of alignment with Gaia-X values. But can you not define your own rules to validate if you are complying to the Gaia-X values? Make use of your own set of mechanisms. So define your own rules. Define what the values are, but also how you want to validate those. And if you have those, then you can implement this in your own tool so that you're able to validate. So then you can add this step and you can also automate it.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, here as a custodian, you can still be inspired by the Gaia-X values and do your implementation of that. Absolutely possible. The point was here that the Gaia-X personnel will not verify that, if that is good enough or not. So you leave that responsibility to the custodian.
So for the bullet point number 4, I would say that to enable trust between the custodian and the Gaia-X, we should rephrase it to that the clearinghouse code is co-developed by the custodian and Gaia-X tech team based on the, let's say, vanilla version of the clearinghouse code.
Yeah. Well phrased. I think that's the intent. Co-developed. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. So now maybe for the second point that I find important is it is flexible model. So it means there could be more important to, if possible, to have some kind of certified third party or service that certified by Gaia-X tech team, for example, to do the validation service for the extension. And normally there could be also some kind of sandbox environment, right? Certified sandbox environment to onboard the new extension, for example. That is the...
Great suggestions. Thanks.
I think it's also worthwhile to mention that the scenarios, plus perhaps the scenario 5, are not mutually exclusive. So, I mean, it's a very, very important statement, I believe, because there's nothing that's preventing you using an existing Gaia-X credential for compatibility or level 1, 2, 3 and add a second custodian issued credential by whatever kind of identity to add that to it and then to require that you have to show both credentials. So it's not, or even with scenario 2, 3, you can combine them as you like. And it's even with third-party credentials like organizational IDs from different regulatory entities.
Absolutely. It's an Italian gelateria, and you can add the ice you like, one on top of the other.
So you are already agree. I think it's more like all the Gaia-X tools as Lego that you are able to use or not. And here you have another set of Lego that you can use together or not. Any other? Yeah, Roland. Roland wants to speak.
So one comment too. As a role as CEO, I have to be neutral. Personally, I'm in Camp Catherine. The point is, first of all, what Klaus said was really important, that they are not mutually inclusive, so you can combine them. Number two, the difference between 3 and 4 will also come with a price, because on a pure scenario 4, you cannot use a Gaia-X logo, so the visibility of compliance will also be less. And this is a discussion we still have. It's not decided yet, but we need to understand where, and I think it was more to your point, where we're going to put our branding on. Because if we leave it completely up to another custodian, why would or should they use a Gaia-X logo? Because it's kind of a quality assurance. And I think this is one important aspect that we need to consider in the scenarios as well. And one last sentence, sorry. Because we had European values, and we took the effort in the PRC to translate European values, which actually means nothing, it's a shell, into what it really is. And this is something that can be accepted in any region, because either you agree with transparency, or you agree with sovereignty, or you don't. But it's very hard for a different region to agree with European values. So that's one work we did as well.
Exactly. We made a more global, friendly, general description of the Gaia-X values, not specifically tied to European legislation, which would be a scenario 2.
So it seems we are running out of time. How many time? Oh, okay.
Okay.
So if I can just finish. No, after, because he asked a lot. Just to finish with this slide. So thanks a lot. I hope you are now aware of this new Lego in the toolbox. And don't hesitate to play with it. You have more information in the white paper, and there's also a kind of feedback. I don't know if you are interested by creating a domain or a geographical extension, but what we have seen is what seems to be important, and probably others, because probably some key points are missing. It's also use cases. Why investing so much money? First of all, business need. What is your sovereignty or autonomy needs, and legal regulatory, because it will cost, so you need to earn something. And the first question to start, is there already custodian to that? Is there already sponsor and budget? This is really key questions, in fact. What could I earn? Is there already a custodian group? If it's a country, you can have the government, but if it's a domain, it's not so easy if nothing is existing. And I can come back to the question.
I just had to comment on the use of the logo in scenario 4. If the code is developed by the Gaia-X tech team and it is certified by the Gaia-X, why are you not allowed to use the logo?
The first statement is nothing is yet decided on that. The naming and branding strategy is still subject of debate. But indeed, you can imagine that for each of these scenarios, the amount of brand exposure for Gaia-X is different. And that's why, for sure, we should make a deliberate choice about what to name and brand for each of these scenarios, or what to allow. And I think that's what Roland meant.
I also have the feeling that sometimes a country can come saying, I don't want to fulfill the Gaia-X values. And then when we check, we found out that, in fact, they are fulfilling the Gaia-X value without knowing it, because it's just the same. So that's why it's not black and white.
And there might be, just fantasizing, a very sketchy, thin label to this type of scenario, because they do use the source code and there is a technical verification, so it has some tie to the Gaia-X branding, so fine. But that would be a much stronger logo and brand for the scenarios 2 and 3, for example, where also the values are validated. So there's probably a layered or a graded branding system to be invented. But we've discussed it many times. We've not come to a final proposal and decision on that yet. Because we said the first thing is to check with the full audience like you, what resonates, who would use this? And we are now with the starting guide after concrete use cases and concrete examples, because the more concrete we can make it, then everyone can picture what it means. And then we will have a better basis to make final decisions on naming and branding.
And the sprint is open, so if you are a Gaia-X member, you can join the sprint, no problem. We are more than welcome.
So let us know if in your region, your domain, you have an interest to further discuss, because we have built already a funnel of interested parties, but there is place for more. And I think we believe there's a huge opportunity for the Gaia-X Trust Framework is we can see it expand in all these areas with domain-specific or geographical rules that get electronically verified. There's an infinite potential there. So let's go after it.
To go deeper on this subject, tomorrow there's a meeting, a presentation regarding the Danube version of the clearinghouse that will allow it.